So let's talk about something a little out there. Quantum energy for your pets. I've got this fascinating document here. It's a scientific-looking report, an expert opinion from an Austrian institute, and it's looking into a device that claims to do just that. Let's dive in and see what they have to say. I mean, we all love our pets, right? We want them to be happy and healthy. But have you ever thought about all the invisible stuff in our environment? Wi-Fi, cell signals, all that. This report kicks off with a really interesting question. Could these things be stressing out our animals in ways we can't even see? Well, according to a company called Leela Quantum Infinity, there is a solution. And it's this little thing right here. It's called the Infinity Bloc, and it's the star of the show in this investigation we're about to break down. All right, so we've got a problem, these so-called invisible stressors, and we've got a proposed quantum solution. But what does that even mean? Let's get into the specifics of what this whole report is about. And look, this isn't just some marketing flyer. Leela Quantum Tech actually paid for a formal expert opinion from a real Austrian institute. Its job was to test this block on a bunch of different domestic animals and see if it really works. Okay, so what is this thing? To really get a handle on the claims, we have to look at how the company itself describes the Infinity Bloc. And luckily, the report quotes them directly. So the report calls it a quantum energy generator. The whole idea is that it creates this concentrated quantum energy space right there between those two golden plates. You really have to keep that phrasing in mind because the entire premise hinges on this concept. And the list of things it supposedly does, it's pretty wild. We're talking about everything from harmonizing 5G signals to neutralizing negative frequencies. It even claims it can copy a frequency into any object. I mean, these are some seriously big claims, even touching on stuff like quantum entanglement. So that makes you wonder, how in the world do you even test for that? Right. With claims that big, you need a way to measure them. So the big question is, how did they do it? Well, the report lays out a very specific method. Everything in this expert opinion comes down to one technique. It's called BioEnergetic System Analysis, or BSEA for short. The report describes it as a way to measure the energetic regulatory behavior in a biological system. Basically, it's a method that claims it can measure and quantify the energy flowing through a living thing. So what does that look like in practice? Well, the BESA method involves taking measurements, electrophysical measurements, at very specific points on the skin. Think of it like acupuncture points. The whole goal is to get a reading on how the body's internal energy system is doing, how it's regulating itself in response to its environment. And this is how they make sense of the data. It's actually pretty straightforward. Everything is color-coded. If you get a reading in the green zone, say between 50 and 70, that's good. It means you're balanced. Yellow means there's too much energy, maybe inflammation. Blue is the opposite, not enough energy. And then there's red. Red means, according to the report, total deregulation. Remember this chart because it's absolutely crucial for understanding their final conclusions. Okay, so we've got the device and we've got the way they measure its effects. Now, let's meet the test subjects. They brought in a pretty diverse group of 8 different animals for this experiment. And this wasn't just a bunch of identical lab mice. Look at this list. We've got cats, dogs, a couple of horses, and even a goat. They're all different ages and in different states of health, too. Like, you have Kaspar, an 18-year-old cat they call decrepit, and then you have Sammy, a puppy who's just 8 months old. It really seems like they wanted to see if this thing works on all sorts of different animals. Okay, and here's where the method gets, let's just say, really interesting. How do you take these super precise BSA measurements on a horse or a goat? Well, the report says you can't, not directly anyway. So they used a human surrogate. Basically, a person stood in for the animal, and the test was done on them to read the animal's energy system. It's a pretty unique approach. So the actual test procedure was broken down into 4 pretty clear steps. Step 1, take a before measurement, a baseline reading for each animal using that surrogate. Step 2, turn on the Infinity Bloc. Step 3, and this is a big one, they say the animals were connected to the block through quantum entanglement. And finally, step 4, take another measurement, an after reading, to see if anything changed. All right, so all of this leads us to the grand finale, the most important part of the whole report, the verdict. After all that testing, what did the Institute actually say? So, did it work? That's the big question, right? Based on their before and after BESA readings, what was the final conclusion of this whole expert opinion?
Well, the report's conclusion couldn't be more clear. This is a direct quote. They said that all the toxic information and energetic deregulations they found in the first test were completely zeroed out or bioenergetically harmonized. In other words, according to their own measurements, it was 100% success.
And just to really hammer it home, the document states that the results are metrologically significant, which means they believe their measurements are valid and also biologically relevant for the pets. So to put it simply, based on the methods they used, this report gives the device a complete and total thumbs up. And that kind of leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What we have here is an expert opinion that describes a world where these invisible energy fields aren't just real, but they can be measured and even fixed by a little quantum device. And it just makes you wonder, if technology like this can do what they say it does, what else could it measure? What other invisible parts of our world, or even ourselves, are next?